is going to style the cover and just some of those image related items. So we first want to have a height and a width. So the height is going to be 300 pixels and the width is just going to be 100%. So that means that each one of those is going to be 350 pixels tall and the width is going to adjust automatically. Then I want to have a background size of cover. So what that's going to do is imagine a scenario where you don't have images that are the same size, which is actually the scenario we're in. Each one of those is sized differently. We want to make sure that we are cropping the images so that they will all sit nicely next to each other. And so that's what background size cover does. Then I want to do background dash position, and then we'll say center. And then lastly, background repeat, and we want to do no repeat. So this is the reason why I set a background image on each one of those elements and why I used inline style. So instead of us putting the images here, I did it right here. And so now all of our styles are going to apply to that background. So now if I come back, hit refresh, you can see we are starting to get somewhere. So you can see that now we have our background image and we're starting to actually have something that looks a little bit closer to what we have here. So we are on our way. Now we still have some work to do. We now need to work with that text. So notice how that text was just sitting down below it, and that is the default behavior. Remember, whenever you have HTML and you have two divs sitting next to each other or below each other in the code, HTML is just going to say, okay, inside that div, you just slide on right underneath, and then it's going to continue on. We want to say, nope, I want to position the HTML right on top of this other div. And so the way we can do that is first by selecting it. So I'm going to say image text wrapper, and inside of it, I'm going to say position absolute. Then, and also one key thing to note here, because this can be a little tricky if you've never done it before, position relative is required for if you want to have any position absolute elements nested inside of it. So that's why we had to add that position relative here, because if we're going to use position absolute, which is us saying we are forcing this element to be someplace where usually it would not go. In order to do that, it has to be in a parent element that has a relative position. So I'm going to say top 0, which means I want this to be positioned at the very top. And then I also now want to use flexbox. So I'm going to say display flex. And now I'm going to say flex direction. We'll use column. Justify content. We're not going to use space between like we did before. Now we're going to say center. Then inside of there, we're going to say align items, center. We'll give it a height of 100%. We'll say text align is going to be centered. And then we'll add some padding. So we'll say padding left is going to be 100 pixels. And then padding right is going to also be 100 pixels. Wow, that was a lot of stuff. So let's actually take a look at this, and then definitely feel free to review each one of these items. But essentially what we're doing is we're saying that this image text wrapper is going to be positioned at the very top wherever we want. Then inside of it, all the elements are going to use flexbox. So we're going to center these items. We're going to use flex. We're going to center them from left to right and top to bottom. That's what align items does. And so justify content is going to do left to right. Align items is top to bottom. We want it to take up the full parent height, so that whole 100%. And then we want all the text inside of it to be centered. So now if we hit refresh, oh yes, this is starting to look better. So now notice that this is starting to finally actually look a little bit more like this. So we have our images, and now because we've used absolute styles and positioning, now we have those images and text sitting on top of that background image. Okay, we are getting much closer to being done. So now let's come back to the code and let's style those images. So now I'm going to grab the, and when I say style the image, I mean the logo image that's sitting on top of it. So I'm going to say logo wrapper, I believe that's what we called it. And here I'll give it a width of 50% and then a margin bottom of, not block in, just margin bottom of 20 pixels. Hit save, and now if we come back and hit refresh, oh, it looks like I forgot to actually select the image. Logo wrapper image, like that. And now if I come back, there we go. So notice how much better it looks when they're a little bit more shrunken down like that. No, they're also now all unified, so now they have the same exact size. So this is starting to get really close. Now you may notice that we're about to get into the part where we're adding that dark fade animation and the subtitle doesn't actually start off. So we need to make the subtitle be invisible in the beginning and then animate it, change its color, and then have it appear later on. So let's see where we're at right now. Right now it's black, and so what we're going to want to do is let's go first, and let's first make sure we have these colors and the style right for the subtitle, and then we'll talk about how we can use JavaScript to animate that. So let's go come here, and the style, let me really quick come back to the index to see what we called that. So that is, yeah, that is just called subtitle. So here I'm going to say subtitle, and then inside of the subtitle we're going to want the font weight. So this is how we can make things bold. I'm going to say font weight is 600, and then the color, let's go with that light sea green. Hit refresh, and that's looking a lot better. Now it's not matching perfectly because we haven't added the custom font yet, but that is what we're wanting from a style perspective. And then we're also going to have to darken these as well. So let's see what else we need to do. And one other thing, one little change I'm going to make. So technically this works, but we are going to have to, I'm going to add a little temporary note here. So I'm going to say needs to be more specific with selector. Because remember, this is going to change based on if someone's hovering over it or not. And so I just want to make a little note there just so I don't forget when I come back to it. So now let's talk about how we can have those images get darkened. So I'm going to create a class here called img darken. And we know we want to animate it. So I'll say transition, and we'll just say 1 second. And then I'm also going to use what is called a filter. So I'm going to say filter, and then we'll go with brightness, and brightness is at, let's go 10%. Okay, this is not going to do anything yet because we have not applied this. We haven't called it in any of the index HTML file. But what this will do, or how we're going to use it, is we're going to kind of use this as our own special function. So we're going to have our JavaScript dynamically add and remove this class when someone is hovering over that. So that's going to be pretty cool. That's going to allow us to have a lot of flexibility with how we can do it, because if you tried to do this without JavaScript, then it's going to be a very tricky kind of feature to implement on the CSS side. It is possible, but it's not the way I would suggest. So I will always go with just a little sprinkling of JavaScript if you want to implement a feature like this. So now let's come up here and let's add that specificity. So here we know this is the ending version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say .img text wrapper, and then we're going to add it. So we're going to say only for that hover state, then this is what we want to occur. So I'm going to hit save there, and now if I hit refresh, then this only turns green and changes when I am hovering over it.